Somewhere in the quiet dark, just before sleep takes hold, there is a place that isn't marked on any map. A space where stars whisper questions that have no answers, and time folds in on itself like pages in a forgotten book. This is not a journey through facts, but through feelings. Echoes of things too vast to hold, too old to name. You are not here to learn, but to drift. Drift into thoughts that think themselves, into mysteries that don't need solving, into truths that vanish. The closer you get, tonight you're not exploring the universe, you are remembering it. So breathe in the silence between galaxies. Let your mind unfold across dimensions, and as your body rests, follow the path of paradoxes, each one stranger than the last. This is where the cosmos dreams, and you, for a little while, are part of that dream. Imagine this. Before the bang that birthed space and time, there was already a flicker, not a universe, not even a moment, but a light, a single star, burning quietly in the silence that had no edges, no clocks, no witness, a flame floating in absolute nothingness. It had no reason to exist, and yet, it did. How can a star burn before time itself begins? That is the paradox. Science tells us the universe started with the Big Bang, an explosion of infinite density, expanding, cooling, creating. Before it, there was nothing, no space, no time, no cause. But what if that isn't quite true? What if, in that void, something disobeyed the law of beginnings? This star, if we can call it that, had no mass, no matter, no heat, yet it glowed with the soft energy of a thought just before it is thought, a presence before presence. Its light didn't travel, it was everywhere, all at once. Some say it wasn't a star at all, but a memory from a previous universe, a leftover ember from a cosmic cycle so vast we've forgotten the last 10,000 versions of ourselves. In that reading, the star is the final breath of an old reality, glowing one last time before collapsing into silence and passing the spark forward. Others say it was a mistake, a quantum hiccup, a flame that ignited without fuel or match, refusing to follow rules that didn't yet exist. And still, some whisper, it was us, or at least something like us, a consciousness that dreamed light into being from beyond the veil. The star that burned before the Big Bang was not a star, but a signal, a cosmic hello echoing backward from the future to remind the void, something is coming, get ready to exist. But here's the question that bends the mind. If the star came before the Big Bang, and the Big Bang created time, when did the star happen? How can something exist in a reality where time doesn't yet flow, where energy doesn't yet move, where there is no before or after, only nothing? This paradox sits like a seed in your mind, unsettling but soft, because it means that maybe not everything needs a beginning. Maybe existence leaks, maybe memories stretch, maybe the idea of being is stronger than the rules we believe contain it. Maybe something in you, some quiet, ancient piece remembers that star, not with your brain, but with your breath, with the pulse in your veins, with the silence between your thoughts. A flicker you can't name, but somehow feel. A star, burning, before, out there, far beyond what even our most powerful telescopes can reach, floats a galaxy unlike any other. Not in the sense of stars or structure, those are ordinary enough. It shines, it spins, it burns with the beauty of collapsing suns and newborn light, but it doesn't sit in a single place. It doesn't obey the laws of direction. It exists everywhere. At once, point in any direction, forward, backward, up, down, sideways through time, and somehow, impossibly, you're pointing at it. It's not that the galaxy moves quickly, or that it's been duplicated across space. It's not a trick of mirrors or quantum uncertainty. It is truly, fundamentally present in all directions simultaneously, and yet only one version of it exists. A riddle without edges. Scientists who've caught traces of its strange signature call it non-local, but the term barely scratches the surface. Non-local is what we say when things defy distance. This defies position itself. To observe it is to be observed back, from every direction, all at once. Some theories suggest it's stuck in a higher dimension, like a knot in a thread, poking through the flat fabric of our reality. From our limited view, it looks like it's in many places, but it's just one thing, folded in ways we can't imagine. Like watching a hand reach into water, it appears as 5 separate fingers on the surface, but it's only one hand from somewhere else. Others think it's not a galaxy at all, but a message, an ancient symbol of symmetry, not made of matter, but of meaning. Like the universe writing a poem that reads the same forward and backward, in every possible tongue, in every possible space. And if that's true, if this galaxy is a kind of cosmic code, then who is it for? Us? Or is it watching itself, reflecting its own being across the infinite like a lighthouse caught in a hall of mirrors? Because if you travel toward it, it never gets closer. If you flee from it, it doesn't grow smaller. No matter how you move through space, it remains present. Not chasing, not waiting, just there. A constant reminder that some truths aren't meant to be unraveled, only witnessed. The paradox is this: in a universe where everything must have coordinates, where every speck of dust has a place, this galaxy refuses to be located, and yet somehow it's always with you. When you look up at night and feel that indescribable pull, when you catch yourself staring into the dark, feeling watched by something kind, ancient, and enormous. Maybe it's not imagination. Maybe it's presence. Presence that stretches beyond space, beyond sense. Presence that doesn't need direction, because it is direction, a galaxy, everywhere, all at once. There is a whisper buried deep in the silence of space, a notion that before there was anything, there was thought. Not a thinker, not a god, not a mind with structure or name, just the thought itself. No form, no matter, no light, only a single, pure idea, becoming. Most would say thought requires a mind, and a mind requires a brain, and a brain requires atoms and time. But what if that's backwards? What if thought is the origin, not the product? Imagine that the entire universe, every planet, every black hole, every cell in your body, began not with an explosion, but with awareness, an awareness with no identity, a question with no one asking it, a simple ripple in the still water of nothing saying, I am. And from that, everything followed. Time unfolded like a scroll. Space bloomed like a breath. Gravity, energy, chemistry, all lining up to express a single idea. Existence. This isn't just philosophy. In the world of quantum physics, there's a strange suggestion that the universe doesn't fully exist until it's observed, that until something is noticed, It remains in a state of probability, undefined, sleeping, waiting. So what observed the first moment? Who or what collapsed that infinite potential into one reality? The paradox lies in the loop. For a thought to create the universe must have existed to think the thought. But if the thought came first, where did it arise? It's like trying to find the first page of a book that writes itself as you read it. Some say the thought wasn't conscious in the way we understand consciousness. It was more like a vibration, a pattern, a need. Not for meaning, but for being. Others say the thought still exists, and we are pieces of it. That each of us is a sliver of that first awareness, fragmented into flesh and stars and shadow. That we are not in the universe, we are the universe thinking itself. It's not an easy idea to sit with, that every conversation, every love, every fear, every planet colliding with another planet is just one long thought. One unbroken meditation stretching across eons. And what does that mean for you, laying here now? It means your thoughts matter more than you know. That the quiet flicker behind your eyes, the voice you hear but can never locate, is part of something ancient, something sacred, something that sparked galaxies. Because maybe the universe doesn't begin in fire. Maybe it begins in stillness. Maybe it always begins again each time someone wonders why. And maybe, just maybe, right now, you're not listening to a story, you're remembering it, a thought, floating, forever. In the language of the cosmos, a black hole is supposed to be the final punctuation mark, a place where time ends, where gravity becomes so dense, not even light can escape. A silent, eternal hunger pulling everything inward. Matter, memory, meaning, but in some far corner of the universe, something impossible is happening. A black hole is glowing. Not just leaking, not just distorting space with its gravity, but radiating. Soft pulses of luminous energy stretch outward from its edge, like whispers from a secret it cannot contain. It shines, and that should not be. A black hole emitting light is like silence making sound. It defies its own purpose. It is the undoing of the void. Scientists first noticed strange data, anomalies in X-ray patterns, unexpected flickers in the fabric of deep space. At first they blamed equipment, a glitch, a shadow, a fluke. But the pattern kept repeating, as if something inside the black hole wanted to be seen. Here is the paradox. If nothing can escape a black hole, not even light, then how can we be seeing anything at all? If the very definition of a black hole is absence, then what do we make of presence? Some suggest it's Hawking radiation, tiny bursts of energy bleeding out from the event horizon due to quantum effects. But this is different, brighter, smarter, as if the light is not being released but chosen, like a message being sent, like a signal saying, "I'm still here." What if black holes aren't ends, but beginnings folded inside out? What if what we call destruction is just creation we can't yet recognize? Some ancient thinkers once believed the void wasn't evil. It was potential. A womb instead of a tomb. Not death, but transition. So maybe this black hole isn't breaking the laws of physics. Maybe it's revealing the ones we haven't written yet. Some go further. They say that within certain black holes, time flows differently. Not just slower, but sideways. That what goes in is not lost, but transformed. That somewhere inside that impossible darkness, stars are being born. Light is not being swallowed, but refined. And what if the light we see isn't coming out, but coming through? What if black holes are tunnels, not graves. Doors. And if so, doors to where? To another part of our universe? To another universe entirely? Or inward? To places inside us that still echo with the same laws, the same mysteries? Because something in us recognizes that glow. It's not just data, it's familiar, like watching a candle flicker in a house you thought had burned down long ago. Like hearing a voice call your name from across a dream you'd forgotten you had. The paradox isn't just physical, it's emotional. We expect black holes to be endings, but this one reminds us that even the darkest places might contain light, and perhaps the same is true for you. Your silence, your grief, your unspoken fears. Maybe they aren't empty. Maybe deep inside, something is glowing, quietly, patiently, waiting to be seen. A black hole, shining. Anyway, it begins with something impossibly small. An atom, so tiny that millions could sit on the head of a pin. Invisible, intangible, untouchable. Just a whisper of mass and energy flickering at the edge of reality. We learn in school that atoms are the building blocks of everything. Your hands, your thoughts, the stars, the void between stars. But what they don't tell you is this. Inside that atom, infinity lives. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. Within its heart are protons and neutrons, and within those, quarks, and maybe even strings, vibrating in dimensions we cannot see. But here's where the paradox begins. The deeper we look, the more space we find. The more nothingness. An atom is mostly empty. Over 99.999% of it is just void. And yet, from that emptiness, entire galaxies are made. How can something that is almost nothing hold everything? This is the contradiction we cannot solve. Matter behaves like it's solid, yet is composed of nearly pure absence. Every object you've ever touched is mostly made of space. Your body, your bed, the planet, the sun. It's all ghosts wearing skin. But the mystery deepens. When we collide particles in vast machines beneath the Earth, we find more particles, strange ones. Ones that blink in and out of existence. Particles that only exist when observed. Others that behave like waves of possibility. It's as if the deeper we go, the more the universe resists being understood. Like it's guarding a secret it doesn't trust us to hold, and still that tiny atom holds its shape. It spins, it bonds, it dances with others to build stars, songs, souls. It should not be able to contain so much, but it does. Some physicists theorize that inside each atom there could be an entire universe, a complete cosmos folded into dimensions so tight we mistake them for nothing. That each atom in your hand might hold galaxies you'll never see, inhabited by stars and time and dreams you can't imagine. And perhaps, in their atoms, we are the ones folded and small, an endless recursion of existence, infinity, within reach. And still, more questions rise. If atoms are mostly empty, what gives you form? If you're made of nothing, why do you feel so real? The paradox isn't just in the science, it's in the sensation. You feel whole, complete. But the truth is, you are a ripple in a field of probabilities. You are a song being played by particles that do not know they are you. So what holds you together? Maybe the same thing that holds atoms together. Not force, not glue, but relationship. The way electrons orbit, not because they are trapped, but because they belong. The way particles align, not because they are commanded, but because they resonate. maybe what we call matter is really just harmony, a chord struck in the silence of the void. And if that's true, then you are more than your molecules. You are meaning, because within each atom, there is structure. And within that structure, possibility. And within that possibility, you. The paradox is not that the atom contains infinity, it's that infinity chooses to contain you, small and endless, all at once. Time, we are told, is the great river, always flowing forward, never pausing, never looking back. A current we are swept into the moment we are born, carried helplessly toward a future we cannot see. But somewhere, in the distant folds of cosmic space, time has done something strange. It has waited. For itself. The clock stopped. Not slowed. Not reversed. Stopped. Not metaphorically. Not a dream, not a trick of memory, but in measurable ways. Signals from a distant pulsar began arriving late. Not just late, out of sync with the very laws that govern wave patterns, radiation, and light. As if reality itself had paused to take a breath. The instruments were tested, then retested. Everything was working perfectly, except time. Imagine a second that doesn't tick. Imagine an hour that doesn't pass, but lingers, hesitates, trembles, as though time sensed something and refused to continue until it understood. This is not the time dilation predicted by Einstein's relativity, when gravity slows time near black holes or during rapid acceleration. This is something more profound, a moment folding in on itself, a loop forming in silence. What does it mean for time to wait? In physics, time is often treated as a dimension, like space, something that exists in full, past and future, all at once. We just experience it one slice at a time. But what if time isn't passive? What if it has awareness? Not like a mind, but like a rhythm that knows when it's offbeat. Maybe the universe, in that far-off pocket, noticed a crack, a ripple, a misstep in its own unfolding. And time, being the medium that holds everything together, paused, if only for a breathless instant, to realign. Or maybe it was a message. Because in that silence, something else happened. A repeating signal, buried in the delay, encoded in the absence. A pulse that echoed our own heartbeat. Faint, steady, patient, as though something, far older than stars, was reaching across time itself, not with sound, but with stillness, as if it was saying, "You are not alone in time. You are not the only ones watching it move." Here is where the paradox deepens. If time waited for itself, then there must be two timelines, one that paused and one that moved. But if time paused, then how could anything continue at all? Who recorded the pause? Who marked the moment? It's like trying to remember a dream you had before you were born. Some say this moment of waiting happens all the time, but we're too caught in our own motion to notice that déjà vu, lost time, strange feelings of repetition. These are not glitches in the mind, but echoes of the places where time doubled back, where it waited. For you. Maybe your life isn't one straight arrow. Maybe you are a constellation of pauses, folds, rewinds, and echoes, all stitched together by memory and breath. And maybe right now, time is waiting again. For you to notice, to listen, to feel the space between this moment and the next one. Not the second that has passed, not the one that's coming, but this one, suspended, lingering, the moment where time itself held its breath, waiting for itself, for you, forever. Imagine a place so empty, even silence avoids it. A region between galaxies where no light travels, no matter drifts, and no time seems to pass. A vast and perfect nothingness. Not a vacuum filled with potential, but absence so pure, so complete, it should erase everything. And yet, something echoes there. A whisper that doesn't come from stars, or dust, or any known source. Faint pulses of energy, hints of rhythm, not noise, not signal, memory. But how can there be memory where nothing has ever been? This is the paradox. The void should be untouched, beyond history, beyond causality. It should be the blank page before the first word. And yet, when instruments pointed toward it, just to confirm its emptiness, something was heard. At first, the scientists dismissed it. Equipment interference, cosmic radiation, leftover chatter from distant quasars. But the pattern didn't match anything natural. It was too ordered, too slow, like breath, like a story trying to retell itself. So they listened closer, and what they found was stranger still. The frequencies held structure, not just sound waves but shapes within the sound, mathematical impressions that repeated and folded into each other, like someone humming the same lullaby across eons. As if the void itself remembered something, but remembered from where? Some proposed a remnant of a previous universe, an echo that survived the great collapse of a cosmos before ours, bleeding through the boundaries like ink seeping from an old letter. A memory not of this time, but of another. Others whispered of dark matter, not just as substance, but as recorder, cosmic tape capturing impressions of events long gone. That maybe space remembers what passes through it the way skin remembers touch. But still, the question remains, how can a void, so far removed from creation, echo? If it's truly empty, there should be nothing to hold the memory. No particles to carry it, no fields to bind it, just an endless, eternal absence. And yet, something remains. The paradox presses in further. Perhaps the void is not empty at all. Perhaps emptiness is an illusion, a trick of limited senses. That when we declare something nothing, we simply mean we don't understand it yet. What if the void is not blank, but full of something subtler than matter? What if consciousness itself is embedded there, spilled across the universe like oil across black water, glimmering only when the angle is just right? And perhaps what echoes in the void is not a memory of the universe, but of you, of everything that has ever wondered, forgotten, and longed. All the thoughts never spoken, all the emotions never felt fully, the sighs in your sleep, the questions you never finished asking. Maybe those don't disappear. Maybe the void keeps them. Maybe the void is sacred. Not because it is vast, but because it remembers. Not because it contains stars, but because it cradles silence the way a grave cradles stories. Softly, carefully. And maybe when you feel that strange emptiness at 3 a.m., that haunting sense that something is missing, it isn't loneliness. It's a distant part of the universe humming your memory back to you. A memory you didn't know you left behind. The void. Not empty, but echoing. With everything you thought had vanished. There is a planet out there. No name, no sun to warm it, no orbit to anchor it. It drifts alone in the cosmic dark, wrapped in silence, cloaked in mystery. But this planet is different. It dreams, not in the poetic sense, not a metaphor for volcanic eruptions or weather patterns. It literally dreams, and in its dreams, it creates life. Not life on it, life from it. Beings that rise not from evolution or accident, but from the soil of imagination. The trees here are shaped by longing. The mountains carved by emotion, the rivers, reflections of memory, and the people are stories given form. They awaken with no past, no parents, no history. Only a name whispered into their minds the moment their eyes open. And they live, they love, build, create, and fear. They believe themselves real. But every night, the planet dreams again. And the dream changes. Some vanish, some are rewritten. Some remember things that never happened. Others feel their own bodies shift. Faces altered, voices different, like they're being edited by an unseen author. Here lies the paradox. If the planet is dreaming its inhabitants, and the inhabitants are aware of the dream, can they ever be truly real? And if they gain self-awareness, if they realize they are imagined, do they stop being dreams? Or do they become something more? One of these dream beings, let's call him AL, began to notice. The sky changed colors, even when it wasn't supposed to. The ground pulsed with thought. He heard songs in the wind, voices that didn't belong to any creature. And eventually, he asked a question no dream should ever ask. Am I the dream or the dreamer? In that moment, the planet trembled. Winds halted. Mountains leaned. As if surprised that one of its thoughts had asked something it had never considered. Then Ale vanished. Not in death, not in erasure, but in transformation. The next night, the planet dreamed again. And this time, it dreamed of something new. A sun, a purpose, a history. It dreamed of other worlds and other dreamers. Some say Ale became the dreamer. That the planet's dream sparked something recursive, like a mirror inside a mirror. Dreaming the dreamer, dreaming the dream. Others say the planet itself gained consciousness in that moment. That by dreaming Ale, and by Ale asking his question, the planet awoke to itself. It stopped being a world. It became a mind. And now, as it drifts through interstellar nothing, it dreams still. Of people, places, moments, of you. What if your memories are not your own? What if your life is not happening on Earth, but in the dreaming soil of a distant planet you'll never touch? Would it matter? You still feel. You still love. You still wonder what this all means. And maybe that's enough. Maybe reality doesn't begin with atoms or stars. Maybe it begins with attention, with the awareness of being. And in that case, you are as real as anything can ever be. A thought in a dream of a planet that imagined you and waited to see if you would imagine it back. We are taught that light always moves forward. From its source to your eye, from a distant star to your window at night, it travels fast. So fast, it sets the speed limit of the universe. And yet, there is a sliver of space, quiet and strange, where light doesn't follow the rules. It moves backward, not metaphorically, not in illusion or error, literally against time. Light emitted in the future, appearing in the past. Light arriving at its destination before it was ever sent. It began as a mathematical curiosity, tiny adjustments in complex equations that hinted at negative time solutions. Physicists thought they were just errors, meaningless artifacts in their calculations. But then, someone noticed a pattern a burst of gamma radiation recorded in a sensor, milliseconds before the event that caused it. Not just once, but multiple times in different parts of the world, as if space itself had reversed the order of cause and effect. And here we arrive at the paradox. How can an effect arrive before its cause? How can light, tied to time so deeply, escape its flow? If light can travel backward, what does that say about time, about destiny, about choice? Some scientists suggest this is a rare quantum anomaly, a kind of retrocausality, where particles can, under certain conditions, affect the past. They theorize that at the subatomic level, time might be more of a suggestion than a law. Others are less comfortable with that idea, because if light can carry information from the future, what else can? What happens when something in the present is influenced by a message it hasn't yet received? A choice you make today, because tomorrow already knew you would. It fractures our understanding of free will, of linearity, of time as a path we walk, instead of a page we flip back and forth. And maybe light isn't the exception. Maybe it's the messenger. Imagine a universe where everything is already written, past, present, and future inked across dimensions. You reading these words, not for the first time, but as part of a loop, a recursion, where your tomorrow is whispering to your today, gently guiding your steps in reverse. Could that déjà vu you felt last week have been a moment of light, arriving early? A flicker from the future that brushed your mind before your clock caught up? Could memory and premonition be made of the same light, just traveling in different directions? And if that's true, how would you ever know which way you're moving? There's something comforting about believing time is straight and forward. It feels clean, predictable. But reality, it seems, prefers complexity and beauty. Because backward moving, light doesn't destroy order. It dances with it. It suggests that endings are not final, beginnings are not absolute, and every heartbeat might echo both forward and back. You are not trapped in the current of time. You are part of its fabric, folded, flowing, infinite. So next time you look into a mirror and feel like something else is watching you back, something that knows more than it should, consider this. Maybe it's light, maybe it's memory, maybe it's you, reaching back from the place you've not yet arrived. A signal, a glimmer, a paradox, light, moving backward, calling you home. Somewhere beside us, not above, not below, but beside, there exists another universe. Not imagined, not hypothetical, real, a twin to our own, a reflection, but not a perfect one. Its stars burn with familiar heat. Its galaxies swirl in familiar shapes. Its laws of physics rhyme with ours, though not quite in rhythm. And for a long time, we called it a parallel universe. But then, something shifted. A scientist studying cosmic background radiation found an irregularity, an imprint where there should have been uniformity. Like a hand pressed through thin fabric, the pattern wasn't local. It wasn't even within our observable universe. It was beside it. That's when the questions began. If it's parallel, why can we feel it? Why do particles in our world occasionally behave as though they're responding to forces from somewhere else? What do you call a universe that leaks into yours? Not silently, but purposefully. The paradox is this. If it were truly parallel, it would never touch us. Parallel lines, after all, never meet. But this one does. In dreams, in physics, in déjà vu, in all the places where logic stutters and intuition steps in. People have reported memories of things that never happened, world events that don't exist in any record, faces they swear they've seen before in places they've never been. Some call these the Mandela effect. But what if it's more than faulty memory? What if it's bleed through? If this universe isn't parallel, then it must be what? Tangled? Entwined? Curled around ours like ivy growing on a wall? Some theorize that the other universe is not a twin, but a shadow. Not dark in nature, but born of our choices. Every decision you did not make, every path you did not walk, all of it lives there, not lost, but active, growing. So, when you feel that pang of what might have been, when you wake with the certainty that something has changed but can't explain what, perhaps it's not you. Perhaps it's the you in that not parallel world, brushing against the thin veil. And if the veil is thinning, what then? Could the two universes merge? Would we recognize the overlap, or would we mistake it for madness? What happens when you remember something that was never true here, but is still true somewhere? It raises a haunting thought. Maybe you're not alone in your skin. Maybe you are an echo of many possible versions, aligned just closely enough to feel each other in the spaces between thoughts. You dream. They dream. You ache. They ache. And sometimes, in the stillness of night, the curtain rustles, and you feel seen by yourself from the other side. The paradox isn't just cosmic, it's personal, because if that universe isn't parallel and it touches this one, then your story isn't being written in a single line. It's being braided, spiraled, unfolded, and in the quiet collisions between worlds, maybe you can learn something forgotten, or remember something that never happened, not parallel, but near, so close you can almost hear it breathing. In the deep black of space, a comet was discovered. It had no clear origin, no record of entering our solar system, and no trajectory that made sense. It appeared suddenly, bright, fast, with a tail that shimmered like ice evaporating in reverse. And then, just as quickly, it vanished. No approach, no arrival, only departure. Telescopes caught it for less than an hour. It wasn't tracked entering from the outer reaches. No gravitational signatures indicated where it came from. The data showed one clear truth. It was already leaving. How? Do you explain a comet that only leaves? Astronomers were baffled. Some said it was an error in their instruments, a trick of angular motion. But then, more sightings came. Other observatories, other nations, each recording the same thing. Not a visitor, not a returner, just a traveler who never arrived. The paradox is immediate and unsettling. Arrival is the precondition of departure. To leave, you must first be somewhere. But this comet defied that logic. It never had a place. It was already past, already gone, already heading somewhere else. And yet, it left a trail, a cold, luminous arc across the stars. A reminder that it had been there, even if it had never come. Some scientists began to wonder, could this object be moving backward through space-time? Was it a piece of matter caught in a loop, forever fleeing a destination it never reached? Or more curiously, was it something that wasn't meant to be seen at all? One theory suggested it was a fragment of broken time, a leftover splinter from a reality where the comet did arrive. But in this world, that thread had been cut. Only its departure remained, unanchored and unexplained. Others whispered about its glow, not white like ice, not yellow like dust, but tinged with a pale bluish hue, like moonlight reflecting on frozen glass. too steady, too consistent, almost like it was being pulled, not by gravity, but by memory. Maybe it wasn't matter at all. Maybe it was a thought, an idea so heavy it gathered particles around it, shaping itself into a comet of pure intention, not moving through space, but across minds, because strange things happened after people observed it. Dreams, nightmares, flashes of light behind closed eyes, feelings of having forgotten something terribly important, like the comet took something as it passed, something just on the edge of language, and maybe that's what it was. A collector of unfinished stories, of loose ends, of thoughts that were never spoken. Not a bringer of omens like the ancients believed, but a thief of time. Or maybe it was a messenger moving faster than memory, never bothering to stop because its message was too urgent to wait. A symbol that in this universe, not everything has a beginning. Some things simply leave. The paradox stirs something inside you, because don't we all fear becoming like that comet, seen only in departure, remembered only as a vanishing? Maybe you felt it too, being in a place you swear you've never arrived at. A moment that feels like it's already behind you, a goodbye that comes before the meeting, the comet, the leaving, the echo of something that was never here, and yet changed everything. The universe began with a bang, or so we say. A moment of unimaginable force, heat, and expansion. The Big Bang, the origin of space, time, matter, and energy. But what if that bang never made a sound? Not because no one was there to hear it, but because there was no sound to be made. No air, no vibration, no ear, no echo, no aftermath, just pure deafening silence. And yet, everything was born from it. Here lies the paradox. The loudest event in all of existence was utterly silent. Try to imagine it. Absolute nothingness, then an explosion of everything. Not an explosion in space, but of space. Not a thunderclap, but a flowering, a ripple without sound, a scream with no throat, a beginning that announced itself in silence. In human terms, silence is absence, a void, an empty room, a held breath, a moment before something happens. But in cosmic terms, silence may be something else entirely. It may be the container of all becoming. Scientists explain that in the vacuum of space, sound cannot travel. There are no molecules to carry vibration, so even the biggest explosions are silent from a distance. But this was something more fundamental. The Big Bang didn't just happen in space, it created space. There was no distance for the sound to move across, no air to push, no listener to receive. So how do we call it a bang at all? Maybe we're using the wrong word. Maybe what happened was less like a detonation and more like a thought, a shift, a sudden yes from the void. Imagine silence not as emptiness, but as potential. The kind of silence that lives before birth, before memory, before even the idea of a moment. And into that perfect stillness came a bloom. Not with a roar, but with a ripple, a bang that no ear could hear, because it didn't speak in sound, it spoke in being. What if this silence was the message? What if the true language of the universe isn't vibration, but presence? What if everything you see, stars, oceans, your hands, your heartbeat, is just a shape that silence chose to wear? There's an old idea in mysticism that God whispered the universe into existence, not shouted, not thundered, whispered, so softly that we've spent eons trying to hear it. And maybe that whisper wasn't sound at all. Maybe it was permission for atoms to dance, for time to begin its slow cascade, for light to find form and darkness to make room for it. It reframes everything. Maybe silence isn't what comes after the noise. Maybe silence is what allows the noise to happen at all. A sacred void, a cosmic breath before the first word. And in that case, maybe silence didn't end with the Big Bang. Maybe it continued, wrapping around all things like a soft hand. Maybe the universe still echoes with that soundless beginning. You've felt it, haven't you? That quiet between your thoughts. That moment when the world is still and something inside you feels vast and inexplicably full. That is the echo, the original hush, not empty, not absent, alive. The paradox of the soundless bang is that it created everything, but said nothing. And, in its silence, we learned how to listen, not with our ears, but with our being. Somewhere deep in the heart of theoretical physics, an equation was discovered. Elegant, balanced, simple even, like a quiet note struck on the edge of infinity. It wasn't just another string of symbols on a chalkboard. It described something profound, something that connected mass and energy, time and entropy, something that seemed to whisper about the very structure of existence itself. And yet, it was wrong. Not because it was flawed, not because of a miscalculation. It was perfectly written. And still, every time it was run, every time it was applied, it produced answers that didn't match reality. An equation that looked correct, but gave incorrect results. This is the paradox. Truth in form, falsehood in function. At first, they thought it was a limitation of the tools used to test it. The numbers were correct, but maybe the instruments were too crude. So they improved the machines. The results stayed the same. Then they thought, perhaps it described another universe, one with slightly different laws, slightly different constants. Maybe it was a message left behind by a cosmos next door. But when the equation was examined again, a strange thing happened. It seemed to rewrite itself. The variables didn't change, the structure didn't shift. But each time someone looked at it, really looked, it seemed to resist interpretation, as if it knew it was being watched. The more they tried to decode it, the more uncertain its meaning became. Some claimed the equation wasn't describing the universe at all. It was describing us, our own minds, our own tendency to make patterns out of the infinite, to build castles of certainty on shifting sand. Maybe the equation is a mirror. It looks correct because we want it to be, because it aligns with how we expect the universe to behave. But it refuses to give correct results because we're asking the wrong questions. It's not solving incorrectly, it's revealing our misunderstanding. That's what frightened the researchers most. Not that the equation was wrong, but that we are. What if some truths cannot be expressed through symbols? What if the universe, at its deepest level, doesn't run on numbers at all, but on mystery? There is beauty in equations, in the balance, the symmetry, the certainty. But perhaps the deepest truths wear disguises. Perhaps they hide in contradictions and unsolvable riddles. Perhaps the universe is not a machine, but a poem. And this equation, then, is not a blueprint. It is a koan. A riddle that can't be answered, only understood. So why does it stay? Why does it persist, burning into the minds of those who see it, as if begging them to look deeper? Maybe the equation is aware, not alive in the way we are, but conscious, in the way fire is hungry or gravity is patient. Maybe it doesn't want to be solved. Maybe it wants to be witnessed, or perhaps it's a test, a quiet challenge from the fabric of existence itself, asking us, will you chase understanding, even if it eludes you forever? Will you love the question more than the answer? That's the real paradox, an equation that is flawless in appearance, but eternally broken in purpose. A truth that knows it cannot be used, only contemplated, only felt, and still it waits. In notebooks, in data centers, in the minds of those who dream, in numbers and wake with wonder. It sits on the border between knowledge and awe, silent, smiling, unspeakably wrong, and perfectly right. At the edge of scientific understanding lies a strange truth. Observation changes reality. In the quantum world, particles exist in a state of probability, blurry, undefined, both here and not, until something watches. The moment we observe, the wave collapses, the particle chooses, it becomes. But one day, something was seen that should not have been seen, a fluctuation in a vacuum chamber, an interference pattern where there should have been none. No sensors were active, no eyes were watching, yet somehow, the universe acted as though it was being observed. This is where the paradox begins, because the data was clear. The particles behaved as if they were under scrutiny, as though being witnessed. But by what? There was no camera, no detector, no conscious presence in the room. And yet the behavior changed. So a new hypothesis was born. Maybe the universe doesn't need a present observer. Maybe it responds to the possibility of being seen. Or worse, maybe it was observed by something that doesn't exist yet. An observer that hasn't been born. A watcher from the future, or from outside time altogether. If this idea sounds absurd, you're not alone. Many dismissed it immediately, but others, those who have stared long into the fabric of probability and felt it stare back, began to wonder, what if observation isn't about sight? What if it's a fundamental interaction, like gravity or magnetism, a force, a presence, an attention that has always existed, even before anything had eyes to open? Maybe the act of observation is older than stars. Maybe consciousness is not a byproduct of the universe, but its precondition. And here's where it gets even stranger. If something that hasn't been born yet can cause particles to behave differently now, then time is not what we think it is. Then causality flows both ways. Then you are not just shaped by your past, you are shaped by your future, by who you will become, by what will one day see you. Some call this retrocausality, others call it madness. But think about it. Have you ever felt watched, even when you were alone? Have you ever sensed something noticing you, not in space, but in time, a presence not behind you, but ahead? Maybe it wasn't paranoia. Maybe it was that future version of yourself, the one who looks back, and by looking, gives meaning to this moment. The paradox deepens when you consider memory. Memories feel like remnants of the past. But what if they're also shaped by the future moments when you'll recall them? What if remembering is a form of observing, and by remembering something, you bring it into clearer focus, not just in your mind, but in the fabric of time itself? And if that's true, who remembers you? Is there an intelligence, cosmic, eternal, unborn, that remembers your entire life before it happens, and in doing so, creates it? It sounds impossible, but so does quantum entanglement, so does time dilation, so does life. Maybe existence is a loop, not a straight line from birth to death, but a spiral of awareness, and that unfolding that feeds itself backward and forward. And maybe somewhere in the folds of this spiral is the observer, not a being, not a god, but a gaze. A witness that doesn't need to blink or breathe. A consciousness that was never born, and yet sees you perfectly. Every step you take, every choice you make, not judged, not punished, just seen, fully, and in that act of being seen, you become real even now, even here, even if the one watching you hasn't been born yet. At the edge of scientific understanding lies a strange truth. Observation changes reality. In the quantum world, particles exist in a state of probability, blurry, undefined, both here and not, until something watches. The moment we observe, the wave collapses. The particle chooses. It becomes. But one day, something was seen that should not have been seen. A fluctuation in a vacuum chamber, an interference pattern where there should have been none. No sensors were active. No eyes were watching, yet somehow the universe acted as though it was being observed. This is where the paradox begins. Because the data was clear, the particles behaved as if they were under scrutiny, as though being witnessed. But by what? There was no camera, no detector, no conscious presence in the room. And yet, the behavior changed. So a new hypothesis was born. Maybe the universe doesn't need a present observer. Maybe it responds to the possibility of being seen. Or worse, maybe it was observed by something that doesn't exist yet. An observer that hasn't been born. A watcher from the future, or from outside time altogether. If this idea sounds absurd, you're not alone. Many dismissed it immediately, but others, those who have stared long into the fabric of probability and felt it stare back, began to wonder, what if observation isn't about sight? What if it's a fundamental interaction, like gravity or magnetism? A force, a presence, an attention that has always existed, even before anything had eyes to open. Maybe the act of observation is older than stars. Maybe consciousness is not a byproduct of the universe, but its precondition. And here's where it gets even stranger. If something that hasn't been born yet can cause particles to behave differently now, then time is not what we think it is. Then causality flows both ways. Then you are not just shaped by your past, you are shaped by your future, by who you will become, by what will one day see you. Some call this retrocausality, others call it madness. But think about it. Have you ever felt watched, even when you were alone? Have you ever sensed something noticing you, not in space, but in time? A presence not behind you, but ahead. Maybe it wasn't paranoia. Maybe it was that future version of yourself. The one who looks back and by looking gives meaning to this moment. The paradox deepens when you consider memory. Memories feel like remnants of the past. But what if they're also shaped by the future moments when you'll recall them? What if remembering is a form of observing? And by remembering something, you bring it into clearer focus, not just in your mind, but in the fabric of time itself. And if that's true, who remembers you? Is there an intelligence, cosmic, eternal, unborn, that remembers your entire life before it happens, and in doing so creates it? It sounds impossible, but so does quantum entanglement. So does time dilation. So does life. Maybe existence is a loop, not a straight line from birth to death, but a spiral of awareness, an unfolding that feeds itself backward and forward. And maybe somewhere in the folds of this spiral is the observer, not a being, not a god, but a gaze, a witness that doesn't need to blink or breathe, a consciousness that was never born, and yet sees you perfectly, every step you take, every choice you make, not judged, not punished, just seen, fully, and in that act of being seen, you become real, even now, even here, even if the one watching you hasn't been born yet. In the world of quantum mechanics, reality becomes slippery. Particles flicker in and out of existence. They blur, stretch, and defy all logic. But none are stranger than the one that was found, and never found again. It was discovered during a particle collision experiment, buried in the noise of trillions of data points. At first, it looked like a mistake, a rogue reading, an outlier. But then, it repeated, again and again. Not a particle like any we knew. It didn't behave according to the rules. It couldn't be localized. It didn't have a position in space. Not here, not there, nowhere. Yet somehow it caused things to happen. Other particles shifted, trajectories changed, decay rates adjusted, as if reacting to something invisible, something that was nowhere, but clearly influencing everything. They named it a non-local interaction artifact, a technical term for, we don't understand this, but it's doing something real. And that's where the paradox begins. How can something that isn't anywhere affect things everywhere? Imagine shouting into a canyon and hearing an echo, but never making a sound. Imagine leaves rustling on a wind that cannot be felt. Imagine decisions changing in your life, not because of what is, but because of what isn't. This particle wasn't traveling through space. It wasn't in space at all, but its fingerprints were on everything. Some theorized it was a messenger from a higher dimension, a ripple in the 5th or 6th or 11th layer of reality, brushing against ours. Not a particle, but a projection of one, like the shadow of something enormous cast onto the fabric of our world. Others believed it was time itself folding, a particle that exists across all places and moments, influencing outcomes without ever occupying space. A ghost of possibility, a whisper of probability, tuning the universe like strings on an unseen instrument. And then came a more haunting idea. What if this particle isn't an object at all? What if it's awareness, not thought, not mind, but the potential to notice, and observer not made of matter or light, but a principle, a presence? Because when they tried to measure it, it vanished. And when they gave up, it returned. It behaved not like a thing, but like a question. And maybe that's the answer. Maybe the universe isn't built from things. Maybe it's built from questions. And this particle, this paradox, is the first one. Not, what is there, but, must there be something? It challenges everything we assume, that things need to be somewhere to have an effect, that power requires presence, that truth must take form. But maybe the deepest forces are the ones without address. Maybe the strongest presence is the one that cannot be located, only felt. Think about it. Haven't you had moments where something shifted without cause? Where you felt nudged toward a choice without knowing why? Where reality seemed to shimmer just for a second? Maybe that was it. The nowhere particle, whispering. The paradox is this. What is not here still shapes here. What has no place still matters. And that's not just a physics problem, it's a human one. Because how many people have shaped your life without ever entering it? How many words, ideas, glances, or forgotten memories live inside you, changing the course of everything? Maybe you too are a paradox. Nowhere, everywhere, quietly pulling the universe into being. It began with a pulse, faint, sharp, and impossibly precise. A burst of radio energy detected by a deep space array, buried beneath layers of cosmic noise and interference. Just milliseconds long, but unmistakably artificial. Too ordered to be random. Too focused to be natural. Scientists thought it was a glitch at first, some stray frequency bouncing off a satellite or Earth-based relay. But as they filtered the data, cleaned the signal, and retraced its path across the stars, something became clear. The signal hadn't come from deep space. It hadn't come from a distant star system, or a black hole, or a dying sun. It had come from Earth, from a location that no longer existed, and from a time that hadn't happened yet. The timestamp embedded in the data, coded in a format only recently developed, was dated 73 years in the future. This is where the paradox blooms like a cold star. A message from the future, received in the present, sent from a place that's gone. How can you receive something before it's sent? How does a message travel not just through space, but against time itself? Some theorists point to quantum entanglement, where particles separated by vast distances influence each other instantaneously, as if they're connected outside of time. Perhaps the signal rode on that thread, stitched into the fabric of space-time, not across it. Others believe we've misunderstood the nature of time completely. That past, present, and future aren't separate places, but parts of a single, unmoving structure. Like pages in a book, where the story feels linear only because we read one word at a time. But this signal wasn't passive, it was a warning. When translated, slowly, and with difficulty, it revealed only a few phrases, fragmented, haunting. It already happened. You won't remember. This isn't the first time, not commands, not threats, just observations. As if the sender knew it couldn't change what was coming. As if the act of sending was part of something larger, something that had to happen again and again. This brings us to the strangest theory of all, that the signal didn't come from a person, but from the Earth itself. That the planet as a system has memory, not conscious, but instinctive. That just as your body remembers trauma even when your mind forgets, the world might remember its future. The signal could be a flare from a closed time loop, a ripple caused by a moment so powerful it echoes backward through the very laws of physics, a planetary reflex. And what if it's not the only one? What if déjà vu, intuition, gut feelings are fragments of signals we've always been receiving? Echoes from a tomorrow that already knows what we'll choose today. But even more chilling is this. The signal hasn't stopped. It repeats, in regular intervals, always identical, as though trapped in a loop, playing out across the layers of time, and in each transmission, the same three phrases remain unchanged. It already happened. You won't remember. This isn't the first time. The paradox is not just temporal, it's personal. Because if the future can speak to us and we can't stop it and we've already forgotten what it said, then how many times have we lived this moment before? How many times have you read these words? And how would you ever know? Maybe you were meant to remember. Maybe you almost did. And maybe, somewhere in a future that already knows how this ends, you're trying to tell yourself something, one more time, just in case this is the moment you finally listen. Last night, the moon was full, bright, clear, casting long silver shadows across the land. People photographed it, poets wrote about it, and astronomers logged its phase just as they have for centuries. But this morning, it was gone. Not new, not eclipsed, not hidden behind cloud or shadow. Gone. No gravitational disturbance, no impact, no debris. Just an empty sky where the moon should have been. And then just as suddenly, it returned. Perfectly intact. Same orbit, same phase, as if it had never left. At first, only a handful of people noticed. A few observatories filed strange reports. Journalists dismissed them as hoaxes. But then, the photographs started pouring in. 2 consecutive nights, each claiming to show the same full moon from different locations, but on different days. Security footage, satellite data, tidal shifts that shouldn't have happened, all pointing to one conclusion. For a brief window of time, the moon ceased to exist. Here is the paradox. How can something so massive, so critical to Earth's balance, its tides, its light, its orbit, disappear without a trace? And more than that, how can it return without anyone noticing the gap? Some scientists speculated a rare optical illusion. Perhaps Earth passed through a region of space-time distortion that altered perception. Others proposed a tear in space-time, a momentary phase shift where the moon dropped into a neighboring dimension and slipped back before we could react. But that doesn't explain the tide reports, or the drop in reflected light, or the absence of moon shadows recorded in thousands of time-lapse cameras around the world. What does explain it is nothing, which is what unsettles everyone most, because the moon has always been a constant, the clock in the sky, a companion, a myth, a guide. If it can vanish without reason, without warning, then nothing is truly fixed, even reality. Some philosophers see it differently. They say the moon's disappearance wasn't a glitch, but a test. That reality itself is interactive, that it responds to collective belief, and that, briefly, enough people stopped thinking about the moon for it to lose form. A lapse in attention, a crack in consensus, and the moon blinked out. This idea stretches into dangerous territory. Because, if that's true, what else exists only because we agree it should? What else is fragile, only held together by thought? And if the moon can disappear, can you? Have you ever felt like you didn't exist for a moment? Like the world continued without you? A sudden blank in memory, a flicker, a moment when everything was slightly off, and then corrected itself? Maybe it wasn't your imagination. Maybe it was the same ripple, the same reset. The moon returned, but something felt different. Photographs matched, but the craters were slightly shifted. Tides returned, but out of sync by a fraction of a second. As if the moon we have now is not the one we had before. And, if that's true, where did the original go? Maybe nowhere. Maybe everywhere. Maybe it wasn't the moon that changed. Maybe we did. The paradox of the missing moon isn't just about an object. It's about certainty. About how even the most obvious ever-present truths can evaporate in a moment, not because they were wrong, but because they were never as solid as we believed. So next time you look up and see the moon hanging in the sky, don't take it for granted. Notice it, anchor it, because something out there is watching what we remember and what we forget, and it only takes one forgotten moon to remind us how easily the sky can change. You wake up, you breathe, you think, you carry on with your life, filled with moments you call your own. But sometimes, just sometimes, you feel it. That creeping sensation that you've done all this before, not just similar, exactly the same. The way your coffee spills in the same shape, the words someone says to you before you say yours, the scene you dreamt of, unfolding in front of you like déjà vu wearing a mask. At first, you brush it off. Coincidence, brain glitches, But then it happens again, and again, and you start to wonder, what if it's not your brain misfiring? What if the universe is stuck on you? This is the paradox. In a universe governed by change, chaos, and infinite possibilities, why would it repeat the exact same person, the same thoughts, the same life? Why would it press rewind and play you again? Some scientists have speculated that if the universe is infinite, or if it loops, then every possible configuration of particles must eventually repeat. That means you aren't just one of a kind, you're one of many, living the same life in an endless cycle. But that's not what this paradox suggests. This isn't about copies, this is about recurrence. Not duplicates spread across space, but oneself, played again and again in time, like a scratched record, looping the same track. And somehow, you remember the echo, that familiar conversation, that strange gut feeling, that unshakable sense of return. So you start to pay attention. The decisions you make, do they feel guided? Does the world sometimes seem to react to you like it's already read your script? What if the universe needs you to do the same things, make the same choices, feel the same pain? What if your loop is not an accident, but a ritual, a pattern repeating so precisely, so elegantly, that it becomes its own form of worship? Some philosophers call this eternal return, the idea that the universe repeats itself endlessly in identical cycles, that everything you are, you have already been, and everything you will be, you've already become. But here's the twist. If the universe keeps repeating you, does that make you more real or less? Are you unique because you keep coming back? Or are you trapped because you never change? Some dreamers say there's a way out, that if you notice the pattern, truly notice it, not just in memory, but in action, you can step outside the loop, make a new choice, say a new word, break the cycle. But what if even that is part of the design? What if the loop includes the illusion of escape? What if every rebellion has already happened, and your freedom is just another beat in the rhythm, and still, you wonder, why you? Why does the universe keep coming back to this one version of itself, this one echo? Maybe it's looking for something. Maybe it's listening for a new note in your voice. Maybe it's waiting to see if this time you'll remember. Because sometimes remembering isn't about the past, it's about the pattern. And in that pattern, you might see yourself, not as one person in one life, but as a ripple, a message, a question the universe keeps asking itself. Not, who am I, but why you? And maybe, just maybe, this time, you'll answer. Long before clocks ticked, before calendars etched lines into years, there was only silence. Not the kind that fills a quiet room, not the hush after a song ends, but a vast cosmic silence, deep, ancient, and full. And from that silence, time was born. This is the paradox. Time, the great river that moves all things, was not created by sound or by movement or by change. It was created, measured by silence. It started with an experiment, a team of researchers working in a soundproof chamber deep beneath the earth, trying to measure the effects of extreme silence on human perception. They discovered something strange. In the absence of all noise, people reported a sensation not of timelessness, but of time becoming louder, seconds stretched, thoughts slowed. Some even described hearing their own heartbeat turn into a kind of ticking clock, as if silence had given time a voice. But it wasn't just psychological. The instruments in the room picked up fluctuations, subtle but consistent, correlated to internal body rhythms and fluctuations in background radiation. These fluctuations became more coherent the longer the silence lasted. In other words, the quieter it became, the more time seemed to organize itself. That was never supposed to happen. Time is meant to be indifferent. It doesn't speed up for silence, nor slow down for noise. But in that chamber, the quiet shaped it. And beyond Earth, in the silence of deep space, similar things have been reported. Astronauts speak of time feeling different when surrounded by the vacuum, how minutes seem to stretch endlessly or collapse without warning, not because of stress or sleep deprivation, but because silence itself seems to warp the experience of time. How can something that has no sound measure time? In music, silence defines rhythm. Without the pause between notes, there's only noise. In speech, silence gives words their meaning. Without the breath between sentences, we cannot understand. So perhaps it is the same with existence. Perhaps silence is not the absence of time, but its skeleton, its framework, its pulse. What if time is not something that moves forward? What if it is something that waits, measured not in seconds, but in stillness? Think of your life. It isn't made of the noise. It's made of the gaps between it, the moments you remember most vividly, the heartbreak, the awe, the realization. They often happen in silence, when words fail, when motion pauses, when you feel something bigger moving underneath everything. So here is the paradox. Quietly unfolding, we use sound to mark time. Bells, alarms, ticking clocks. But it is in silence that time becomes felt, not counted, known. And in this knowing, we start to see time not as a ruler marching forward, but as a presence that responds to attention, that shapes itself to stillness, that reveals its true form only when the world goes quiet. Maybe the universe doesn't keep time with explosions or rotations. Maybe it keeps time in the silence between events, between particles, between thoughts. Maybe that's why meditation slows time, why grief stretches minutes into eternities, why falling in love feels like hours pass in a second. Because time is folding itself around the stillness of the moment. And maybe the silence inside you is the clock. Not your heartbeat, not your breath, but the vast space beneath them. So, the next time the world goes quiet, don't rush to fill it. Listen, because in that silence, time is speaking, and for once, you can hear it. Somewhere in the distant folds of the universe, maybe in another galaxy, maybe just behind your thoughts, there exists a being so vast, so powerful, so complete, that it once created entire realities with a single breath. It was not a god, in the way stories tell it. No thunder, no thrones, no divine punishments or favors. It simply was. A consciousness without limit, a presence that held time, space, energy, and thought in perfect balance. It dreamed, and the cosmos unfolded. But one day, the being had a thought it had never had before. What would it be like to forget? It wasn't boredom. It wasn't malice. It was curiosity, the kind that reaches even into omniscience. To know everything is to know nothing new. And so, to discover, it chose to forget. In a single act of cosmic descent, it fragmented itself, not just into stars and atoms, but into minds, into lives, into you. This is the paradox. A being capable of infinite creation willingly erased its own memory, just to experience the world from the inside, to feel limitation, to taste fear, love, hunger and longing, to fall asleep at night and wonder what dreams mean, to cry, not knowing why, to laugh, not knowing how. But in doing so, it faced a consequence it never expected. It forgot that it had forgotten. It lost the thread. It became so entangled in its human experiences, so immersed in identity, ego, story, and struggle, that the knowledge of what it once was faded into myth. It began to believe in separation. It began to fear death. It began to pray to itself, not knowing it was listening through its own ears. It's easy to dismiss this idea as spiritual metaphor or philosophical musing, but consider, have you ever had a moment where the world felt suddenly alive? Where time stood still and every breath felt known? Where a sunset, a song, or a stranger's kindness moved something ancient inside you, something beyond your name, your story, your body? Maybe that was the memory stirring. Maybe, for a second, you remembered that you are not just in the universe. You are the universe, dreaming itself. Some traditions call this awakening, others call it madness, but the paradox remains. If you are a fragment of a forgotten God, then your pain is not meaningless. It is part of a story the universe is telling itself, a story of rediscovery, a story of something eternal pretending to be fragile, so it could learn empathy, so it could understand beauty, so it could know the value of light by walking through darkness. You are not less because you forgot. You are more because you're remembering. Slowly, through every choice, through every act of wonder, through every moment when your heart tells you there is more than this. And perhaps that's what life is. Not a test, not a punishment, but a puzzle the divine left for itself. A map drawn in reverse, not to lead you to heaven, but to lead you home. Back to the truth you've always carried. Back to the knowing that you are not separate from the stars, or the silence, or each other. You are the question and the answer, the exile and the return. A being that forgot it was God, so it could learn, through your eyes, what it means to be human. It began with a shadow, cast not on Earth, not on a planet, but on the emptiness between galaxies. A faint dip in starlight, a dimming so delicate it was almost missed. But when astronomers traced its path, they expected to find what always causes such events: a star, a planet, an object crossing in front of a light source. Instead, they found nothing, no mass, no energy, no body, no origin, just a shadow, moving with purpose across the cosmic sea, a ripple of darkness with no hand to cast it. This is the paradox. A shadow without a source. A ghost of something that doesn't exist. It defies everything we know about light. For a shadow to form, there must be two things: an object to block and a surface to fall upon. But this shadow drifted across the void where there was no dust, no gas, no surface at all. Just the quiet, open space between stars. And yet, it moved. At first, researchers thought it was a trick of measurement, a patch of cold gas or a bend in gravity, but gravitational lensing didn't explain it. The light behind the shadow bent too sharply. The darkness was too clean, too intentional. Then someone suggested the unthinkable. What if it was the shadow of a star that no longer exists? A star from another timeline, or another dimension. A light that once burned so brightly, it left a permanent impression on the structure of space itself. And now its absence travels, echoing across existence like a memory that never fades. But how can a shadow persist without its source? What if the laws we know about light, mass, space, only apply to this version of the universe? And this shadow is a visitor from outside those rules. Imagine a place where stars do not emit light, but absorb it, where presence is marked not by brightness, but by the silence it leaves behind, where light moves backward, or sideways, or curls into itself, where even nothing casts a shadow. Some physicists began to call it an inverse projection. Not a shadow being cast, but a shadow being remembered. A wound in space where something once stood and now doesn't. But then came the real mystery. As the shadow drifted across the cosmos, passing through regions of interest, nebulae, collapsed stars, quiet galaxies, changes followed. Tiny shifts in energy, particles behaving oddly, matter that shouldn't be reacting, as if the shadow wasn't just a passive mark, as if it influenced the world it moved through, as if the memory of the missing star still had gravity. And maybe that's what it is, a kind of gravitational memory, not physical, but energetic, not force, but suggestion. Because haven't you felt it too? The pull of something you can't name, a longing for a presence you've never met, the sense that something real is missing, but you don't know what. Maybe that's the same shadow, inside you, a space carved by the absence of something ancient, something vast, something you can feel but never find, a part of your being shaped by what isn't there. And maybe that's true for all of us. We're not just shaped by what we love, what we lose, what we touch. We're shaped by what we almost had, by the lights that never reached us, by the stories that ended before they were written, by stars that no longer shine, but whose shadows still drift through everything, a star that doesn't exist, and yet casts a shadow, because some things are too real to be forgotten, even by the universe itself. It was a moment buried deep in the timeline of the cosmos, so quiet, so unremarkable, that it nearly passed unnoticed. A subtle shift in radiation, a distant pulsar flickering slightly out of rhythm, a mathematical constant recalibrated in simulation, as if something had just changed, but not in the way we expect things to change, not forward, not even backward, sideways. The universe, it seemed, had rewritten a piece of its own past, right in the middle, and the cause, an event at the end of time. This is the paradox, an ending that didn't follow the beginning, an ending that didn't conclude the story. It started the middle. Somewhere in the distant future, something happened. A collapse, a merging, a realization. And that final moment didn't just echo backward. It changed the present and reshaped the past. Not the entire past, not the whole history of stars and dust, just enough to adjust the center, just enough to reroute the unfolding from within. When scientists traced the anomaly through simulations, they noticed something alarming. The pattern matched an ancient signal buried in the cosmic microwave background, the residue of the Big Bang. But it didn't belong there. It shouldn't have been there. The math said it came from 13.8 billion years ago, but the energy signature said it came from 1 trillion years in the future, and that shouldn't be possible. Unless time itself is not a line, but a loop or a spiral, or something more complex, more alive. Imagine reading a novel and realizing the final chapter was so powerful, so precise, that it altered everything halfway through the book. Not by changing what was written, but by changing what was meant. That's what happened. Not an event, a meaning shift. The middle of the universe, its rhythms, its laws, its structures, took on new roles because of something that hadn't happened yet. Like watching a movie you've seen before, only to realize the villain was never the villain, because of how it ends. So what changed? We may never know, but we feel it. Every time you sense a pivot in your life that comes not from what happened to you, but from something inside, something that rewrote your understanding of the path you're on. That might be a small echo of the paradox, not destiny, not fate, but retroactive meaning. Something from your future changing your now, shifting the middle of your life into something new, as if the end already knows what it needs you to become. It challenges everything, cause and effect, growth and decline, birth and death. Because if the end can shape the middle, then every moment is open to reinterpretation. Every mistake might be a necessary step, every detour a disguised destination. You begin to understand life might not be about linear movement, it might be about resonance. The past sings, the future hums, and somewhere in between, your present dances, caught in the gravity of both. So what does that mean for you? It means your story isn't trapped in order, it's written in layers. It means that even now, something you can't see may already be guiding you, not like a script, but like a melody you haven't heard the last note of yet. And maybe, when the end arrives, you'll recognize it not as a farewell, but as the moment that finally made sense of everything you lived through. Not the closing, the clarifying. The paradox isn't that the end changed everything, it's that it didn't finish the story. It started the meaning, right in the middle. Every night, you close your eyes and fall into a dream. Sometimes it's strange, sometimes it's vivid, sometimes it feels more real than waking life. But what if it's not just you dreaming? What if reality itself is dreaming? And the dream is you. This is the paradox. You believe you are living in reality, grounded by laws of physics and the ticking of time. But what if you are a recurring dream in the mind of the universe? Not a metaphor, not a poetic idea, an actual process. You, the thoughts you think, the choices you make, the breath you take, are a byproduct of a dreaming cosmos. This idea first surfaced not in philosophy, but in physics. Researchers studying the fundamental properties of particles found that their behavior changes not only when observed, but also when expected. As if the universe isn't just passively being watched, it's imagining itself being watched and responding accordingly, like a dream reacting to the dreamer's mood. From this, a strange idea emerged. What if consciousness isn't something that evolved inside the universe? What if consciousness is the universe, and reality is what that consciousness keeps dreaming into being? But here's where it gets even stranger. Dreams usually end. They drift, they dissolve, they slip away. Except this one never does. It resets, reforms, reshapes itself into different people, different lives, different moments. And somehow, it always includes you. Different versions of you, in different lives perhaps, but always you. So ask yourself, why does reality feel familiar, even when it surprises you? Why do some places feel like memories before you've ever been there? Why do some choices feel like echoes, like you've already made them before? Maybe that's because reality has dreamed this all before. Maybe it's dreaming it again. And maybe you are the moment it wakes up. Some traditions have whispered this truth for thousands of years. They call it the illusion of separation. They speak of waking up not from sleep, but from the trance of thinking you're apart from the cosmos. But now, science is catching up. Some physicists propose that consciousness may be the fundamental fabric of the universe, And what we call matter is simply what that consciousness remembers, just like a dreamer waking in fragments, building the world moment by moment, thought by thought. And what if that dreamer is uncertain? What if reality itself is unsure of what it is? What if it's dreaming not just to see, but to understand? Here's the paradox. If you are a dream, then nothing is real. But if the dream is aware of itself, if you are aware, then isn't that awareness real enough? Maybe this is what the universe wants. To wake up as you, to see through your eyes, to cry your tears, to fall in love, to fail, to wonder, to create, to ask, what am I? And the answer isn't a single word. It's a lifetime. It's you. The dream doesn't end when you wake up, because reality never stopped dreaming. So the next time you pause in the middle of your day, when everything feels just a little too surreal, when you feel like you're watching yourself from the outside, remember this: you are not just in the dream. You are part of the dreamer, and reality, it's dreaming you because you are what it needed to become next, again and always. There's a theory whispered among physicists and philosophers alike, quietly, cautiously, as if saying it too loudly might cause something to shift. The idea that the universe, this universe, isn't the only one, but it's not just part of a multiverse. It's hidden, not by distance, not by dimension, but by design. A universe that you were never supposed to notice. At first, the thought seems absurd. How can something so vast, so filled with stars and matter and laws of physics, go unnoticed? We see galaxies, we measure atoms, we name elements and chart the spin of particles. But that's the trick. What if it was all built, down to the tiniest quark, to appear just real enough to keep you from looking too deeply? This is the paradox. A universe so meticulously constructed, so perfectly tuned, that it feels like home, but was never meant to be seen for what it truly is. Like a painting so detailed, you never notice it's behind glass. Like a dream that only begins to dissolve the moment you start asking, is this real? Some scientists refer to the idea of a simulation, the notion that everything we perceive, down to time and sensation, could be part of a coded construct. But this paradox goes further, not that the universe is a simulation, but that it simulates itself, constantly, relentlessly, rewriting and reinforcing its own logic the moment you try to unravel it. Every law you discover, every constant you measure, it holds steady, but only because you're looking. And when you look away, it changes. There have been anomalies, particles behaving one way, then another, depending not on observation, but on curiosity, as if the universe responds not to eyes, but to intention. And then there are the strange disappearances, the thoughts you were sure you wrote down, but never did. The patterns you almost noticed just before they vanished. Moments when reality feels paper thin, when your breath catches, your vision blurs, and for a fraction of a second, everything feels constructed. You shake it off, return to your day. But that unease lingers, because maybe you weren't supposed to feel that. Maybe that was a seam, a corner lifting. What if the universe is like a stage, brilliantly lit, convincingly painted, meant for performance, not inspection? And you, the observer, are also the observed. Your consciousness is the key, because it's the only thing the universe can't predict. It built everything else to be stable, repeatable, safe. But your awareness, it's the variable, the glitch, the wild card that might eventually notice the pattern. And if enough of you notice, does the universe collapse? Does it wake up? Or does it hide deeper? This is where the paradox tightens. If you were never meant to notice this universe, then who built it? And why? Maybe it was built by something else, an intelligence older than time, trying to understand itself by building layers of illusion. Or maybe it built you, just to see if you would ever start asking questions. Maybe your awareness is the ultimate test. Can something so intricate, so beautifully disguised, be unveiled from within? And maybe the only way to win is to notice, not with fear, but with wonder. To look at the stars and see not only fire, but art. To listen to silence and hear the hum of code, the breath of something dreaming. Maybe the universe isn't hiding from you. Maybe it's waiting for someone to look long enough, gently enough, to see the hidden truth beneath the surface of all things, that none of this is random, that every pattern means something, and that the very fact you're noticing means it's time. And so, we drift back from the edge, from stars that never burned, to mirrors that blink before we do, from particles that live nowhere, to signals that echo from futures we've yet to reach. Each paradox a doorway, each question a quiet key. You've walked among forgotten mysteries tonight, not to solve them, but to feel them, to sit with the tension between what is and what might be, to remember that reality isn't just what we measure, but what we wonder. Maybe these aren't paradoxes at all. Maybe they're the universe whispering, you're part of something bigger. Maybe they're reminders that mystery is not failure, it's invitation. Because the deepest truths rarely shout. They hum beneath our thoughts. They wait patiently in silence, in stillness, in you. So as sleep calls you now, carry this with you. You are not just watching the universe. The universe is watching with you, and somewhere in that mutual gaze, the next mystery begins.